I'm a hustler, baby.
It's time for Hustle Her Podcast. I'm your host, Deshae Keynes. Hustle Her is all about inspiring women through real life experiences that have helped to mold and develop not only me, but my guests into the entrepreneurs and leaders we are today. If you're an enterprising woman determined to succeed and looking for a bit of motivation, a bit of tough love, and some actionable takeaways to be the best you, girl, you are in the right place. Hey guys, and welcome back to Hustle Her Podcast. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. As always, we want to give a big shout out to our season 4 sponsors, Brown & Company, as well as 59 Front. Make sure you head over to the website, hustleherpodcast.com, to sign up to be a VIP listener. You can also get some cool background information on the guests for today, and you can also see the episodes. So you can also check all of that out over on the website, hustleherpodcast.com. So my next guest today is the newest executive director of the Women's Resource Center, Juanae Crockwell. How are you?
I am good. I am good. I'm happy to be here.
Good. I'm glad. I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm glad. It's so nice when it's someone that you know, you can just be comfortable, and we can just have a conversation.
Just have a chit chat.
There we go. That's it, right? All the nerves just fly away. Yes. There you go. All right. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a few questions, help everyone to just get to know you a little bit better,
sure,
and then we'll jump right in. Cool?
Okay,
All
cool.
right. All right. I am happiest when?
Eating.
I love that.
Or
That's
traveling.
relatable.
Or traveling, but eating.
Okay. That is relatable, though. 100% relatable. Okay. Tell me about your skincare routine.
Oh my gosh, I'm the worst. Like,
But you have such good skin. It's beautiful.
thank you. It's genetics, but I literally just
I love that.
I literally just wash my face
Yeah.
with like right now I'm using, is it like CeraVe? Something like that.
Yeah. I
CeraVe?
love it. It's good.
Yes. So somebody gave it to me and I've been using it and I like it.
Nice.
And so I just wash and sometimes I'll get a little fancy, use a little toner or something.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it.
Overall. Okay.
Yeah.
So are you a coffee drinker?
I am definitely a coffee
What's
drinker.
your go-to coffee order?
Dirty chai latte.
What's a dirty chai latte?
Oh, it sounds really dirty. But it's so you have chai tea,
Yes.
right? And a dirty chai latte is basically where you put a shot of espresso in the chai.
And the chai tea.
tea.
I know chai tea is like a powder. They put it in. It's like they firm it up. I know that, but I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, I started drinking chai tea lattes in college because I wasn't a coffee drinker originally, right?
it.
And then, somebody told me you should put a shot of espresso in it. And
That's got to be life-changing then.
life-changing.
Love
Life-changing.
a little coffee. All right. All right. Who's your closest friend?
Oh my goodness. Trying to get me in trouble.
Uh-oh.
So I have lots of different friend groups, but I'm going to go with my closest 2 friends who have been my best friends since Bermuda Institute. So that would be
Shout out to B.I. Woo, woo.
B.I.
The real B.I.
The real B.I. That would be Christine Jones and Samantha Crockwell.
Oh, yes. The old girls guys went to B.I.
Yes.
Yes, definitely. Okay. And what does love feel like?
Ooh, that went deep.
Did it? People always say that, and I'm like, I don't know.
I think what I've learned now, love feels safe and calming.
Yeah. Okay. All right. What are you listening to right now?
Music-wise?
Music-wise.
I am so stuck in the early 2000s.
I feel you on that.
So yeah, I will put on like a good throwback playlist. I'm like a Mariah Carey, Alicia Keys.
Do you try to hit the notes?
I definitely try to hit the notes.
You can sing though.
I'm a choir singer.
Me too. I'm a blender. That's what I call it. I blend.
I'm a choir singer.
I blend.
But
I am not a
in
soloist.
the shower, however, I am a performer.
There you go. There you go. I'm okay with that. All right. What's a hidden talent?
I'm sorry. A hidden talent. Hidden talent. I don't hide much, so I'm trying to think.
It's difficult, right?
It's so funny because I tend to think that I'm not really like talented in like the artistic way.
Me either. I agree. I get
right?
that.
I don't know.
Okay, that's okay.
Well, I don't know anything appropriate to say
Okay.
on the podcast.
That just took me out. Oh my goodness. Okay, celebrity crush.
Idris Elba.
Gotta love it.
Love him.
Honestly, we're gonna have to do a poll on the IG page of whose people's celebrity crushes. It's gonna have to be type in who you want and Idris Elba because
everybody loves Idris Elba.
He's so handsome. They kind of spoiled it for me though. So my aunt was on and she said Idris, right? But then someone was like, "Well, Wayne looks like Idris," and
I don't see it though.
My uncle, and my uncle's also a twin. Right? So that's also my dad. So it's kind of gross now. So I can't enjoy it like I used to.
I don't see it though.
Yeah. I don't see it either.
I mean, your dad and your uncle are very handsome.
All right. Let's keep going.
But.
All right. All right. Cool. Okay. Cool. All right. And then finally, who's your cop match team?
Somerset.
Praise the Lord. Hallelujah.
Yes.
Thank Jesus. We're good
we
to
can continue.
Exactly. There we go. All right. So tell me about young Juanae. Like, how were you growing up?
Young Juanae. Young Juanae was very creative, even though I just said that I don't feel like I have creative talents because I really don't. I'm not artistic, but I was creative in the sense that I was always creating something. Like I grew up kind of like an only child.
Okay.
Even though I had two brothers and they were much older than me. Yeah. So until they had children, it was just me. Like, so I had imaginary friends and, you know, Barbie dolls, like.
That were all your friends.
They were all my friends.
Yes.
And it sounds kind of sad and embarrassing.
Yeah, that's only child life.
But
that's only child life.
Yeah, I was creative. I would just make my own fun, you know. And then I guess as I got a little bit older, I was a bit nerdy-ish. Like I really loved school and reading and
What was your favorite subject in school?
Favorite subject was history and English.
Yeah.
Loved history and English.
Mr. Hill.
Oh my gosh, Mr. Hill. Loved Mr. Hill.
One of the greats.
And Dr. Douglas, my English teacher.
Yes, same. He was my English teacher as well. Yeah, he was really good. He actually did speech and debate for me, and actually that's how I fell in love with speech and debate was because of Dr. Douglas. Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah. Okay, so what did you want to be, though, growing up?
So I went back and forth between a teacher and a lawyer. So when I was little, it was a teacher. And once I had my nieces and nephews around, right, I would torture them by playing a teacher. And then as I got older, like high school, it switched to lawyer. I even did like my life skills internship thing with your uncle.
At DPP?
Yep, at DPP. And then when I went to uni, it kind of switched back to teacher. But I'm none of those things now. So.
That's crazy. So walk me through how you ended up not going into teaching or into law, and now you're the executive director of the Women's Resource Center. Right. How did that shift happen?
Well, it's a long story, but life happened. Yep. So basically, when I went to school, I went to Newbold College, which is a very unknown college, is an Adventist school in the UK. They've actually closed down now. And I went there. That. Yeah, they closed down, which is sad. But I went there because my dad said I had to go to an Adventist school. Non-negotiable if he was paying.
I get it.
It had to be an Adventist school. I didn't want to go to Oakwood because my whole class was going to Oakwood, and I love them. Shout out to class of 04. But
you guys were a tight class. Yes, you were.
Wanted a little distance. Yes. So I chose from the courses that they actually had available. They didn't have like lots of stuff. And so I chose a BA in humanities, which was history and literature. And I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, but I just knew I loved history and literature. So if I'm going to study for 4 years, I might as well do something that I love. And then I figured the only thing I could do with that was teach. So when I graduated, that was the plan. I was going to go get a postgraduate diploma for teaching. But life happened. And I guess we'll probably get into that a little bit more. Life happened, and I actually dropped out of my master's degree program. Had to come back to Bermuda, got pregnant with my first son. And, you know, I had to work. So it was less about what I wanted to do, you know, what my dreams were, and more about providing and, you know, growing up, really. And so I kind of stumbled into administration work, right? So I worked at the Department of Community and Cultural Affairs, still within like my passion, history, culture, all of that. But I was more like admin support. And so I spent a good 10 years working in admin. And then you know, like I said, we'll get into it more later. But through that time period, I became involved in a lot of social activism, really interested in the third sector. So I went back to school, got a master's in community development, and that's how I ended up.
I didn't realize you went back to school to do that. And at that time, you had more than one
at that time,
child,
I had
right?
three sons. So I have a 12-year-old and 9-year-old twins. And so I went back I started in 2019. And it was like the program was distance learning, but you had to show up for intensive classes each semester. So I would fly back and forth every semester to the UK. And then the pandemic happened. So I actually finished my master's in the pandemic while homeschooling my 3 kids. I don't even know how I did it.
I was going to ask, like, how, that doesn't even sound possible.
Yeah, I don't know how I wrote a dissertation with 3 kids.
That's what's so awesome about women, though. Like, quick pause. Like, that's like a serious woman thing to do, is to have 3 children, be in school pretty much full time. And you're not only having the 3 children, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. And then you're homeschooling 3 children. Like, not a properly professional trained teacher.
Not at all.
And then you're also doing your own master's degree. Like, that's insane, but you got it done.
I got it done. And I think that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of. Like, at first, it was a bit embarrassing because, you know, when you grow up in an Adventist community, education's important. So the fact that I dropped out was not something I was proud of, you know? So going back was always like a thing. Like, it was always in the back of my mind, you know? And so to be able to go back and complete it, it was like, yeah, I did it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? No, I get it. And I think that the additional pressure in the Adventist community when it comes to those things, it's not just on you, it's also on your family. Right?
Definitely.
And it's just like a sense of shame in a sense when certain things like that happen. So going back is kind of like, it's for you, but it's also like for your community too,
it's for my community. And, you know, my community, BI, Southampton Church, my parents, my family, they poured so much love into me during that time. I felt like not only did I owe it to myself, but I owed it to them to realize my full potential. You know,
amazing. Yeah. So you spoke about, you brought it up earlier about, you know, life started lifing, right? Life was life. Someone needs to coin that and like make it a proper term. Somebody needs to be making money off of that, right? So in your bio, you speak about, you know, dealing with, you know, some of the worst times in your life, darkest times in your life with abuse and addiction and those types of things. Like, walk me through where the kind of the genesis of that, like how did that all start?
How did that all start? So I was away in school at New Build. After my freshman year, I came back home for the summer and I met this wonderful man. Right?
How does it always start with a man?
You know, and he was much older than me, significantly older than me. And, you know, my friends and I, we joke all the time about how I've always, like, been attracted to older men. And I don't know if it's because, like, my brothers were older, not blaming them or anything.
No,
but
you get it.
Just having older men around just made it easy. So anyway, I met this older guy and we started dating. I didn't know anything about him because I was a relatively sheltered, you know, Christian girl. And so I met this guy and I'm trying to say this without like really bashing him because he's really done a lot of work to change his life too. And I respect that. But at that time, you know, he was a drug addict, drug dealer, criminal in and out of prison. But I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about his past reputation, you know? And so that naivety allowed me to kind of see things about him that I probably would never saw if I knew anything about it.
They like to say red flags now.
Yeah.
See the red flags.
I didn't see any of that, you know, and it was exciting and completely different from anything I had ever experienced, you know, hanging out, clubs, the street life, you know, not having to pay to go in a club, drinks just being thrown at you. Like, I felt like I had arrived, you know? And so I threw myself into that relationship. And oddly enough, you talked about how it's crazy how women are able to do things under, you know, extenuating circumstances.
Pressure.
In this relationship, you know, I would come home for all my breaks, Christmas, summer, sometimes fall breaks or whatever, and I would be with him running the streets, like drugs, alcohol, whatever, running the streets. And then I'll get on a plane and I'll go back to New Build and like live a totally double life. Like, you know, student association president, you know, like just.
And New Build is not a huge college either.
No,
like it wasn't. Tiny. So it was small and super Adventist.
Yeah. Super tiny. And yeah, so I lived this double life for 3 years until I graduated from New Build. And then when I graduated, I was back in Bermuda, kind of contemplating what I was going to do next. And really, if I wasn't in the relationship, I would have just went straight on to my master's, right? But I was in love.
We're in love. I just want to say, girl, but we're in love. We do stupid things.
I was in love. And, you know, he had introduced me to, like I said, a life that I had never experienced, that fast-paced life, you know? And I liked it. I liked it a lot. And so I feel like in a lot of ways I chose to abandon all the principles and values that I was raised with to pursue this life with someone that was living something totally different, you know. But unfortunately, through all of that, you know, he introduced me to drugs. He was abusive, not physically, but mentally, emotionally, a lot of like coercive control. And so that broke me down. Like that broke me down. And I became completely dependent on him. Yeah. You know, like he became the center of my world. Yeah. And, you know, it all came to a head when he committed a crime. And I was aware of the crime, but I did not, like when the police questioned me, I withheld what I knew. And so in doing so, I became a co-conspirator in that because I was aware of the crime before it happened. Not just aware after it happened. I was aware that this was what he was planning to do before it happened. And so I was charged with conspiracy. Wow. Yeah. And that's when I say lifed, that was lifing, where I had to drop out of school because I actually did go back to school. The relationship was such where it was like he was in and out of jail. So he ended up going back to prison. And I saw that as an opportunity to go back to school, which is so crazy. Like just the polar opposite, you know, lives that we lived, you know. So he went back to prison, I went back to school. And then when I came home for Christmas break in 2008, I was charged with conspiracy. And so I couldn't finish. I had to drop out. You know, I had to surrender my passport, all of that. And I was on bail for, oh my goodness, I was on bail for almost 18 months. Wow. Just waiting to find out what happened. During that time period, he was flown off to the UK, you know, started a whole new life. Wow. And I just was left to kind of hold bag, right? And in the end, I pled guilty because, you know, my dad, and you know, my dad recently passed away, but my dad, he said, if you want my support, you have to do the right thing. Like, I have your back. I love you. I'm not going to abandon you. This doesn't change anything. But you have to do the right thing. So if you're guilty, you need to go and you need to earn that. And that's what I did. Wow.
That's a crazy level of support though, right? Most people think like if your parents especially, right? Like there's going to be there or they're going to shun you, right? And not be a part of it. But like to have that support, but it's not conditional support, but like you're going to do the right thing if this support is what I'm going to give you. Like, yes, you did something wrong, but you're going to have to earn up to it. Yeah. It's amazing though, right?
Yeah, it's
unconditional kind of.
It's unconditional. And it was a kind of love and support where he wasn't worried about what other people thought, you know, because I probably could have beat the case, maybe. I don't know, right? But he knew that, I think he was more concerned with like, my salvation.
I was gonna say the soul,
you know, my soul, and his thing was like, I don't care what anybody thinks or says about you. I just want you to do the next right thing, you know. And that's probably one of the greatest lessons I ever learned in my life is that you can make a million mistakes, but you always have another choice. And you get to choose. Are you going to keep making mistakes? Are you going to keep doing the wrong thing? Or are you going to make a different choice, you know? And my daddy and my whole family, I'm speaking specifically about my dad, but my whole family was super supportive, you know? And they gave me the space to be able to make the next right choice, you know? And that's kind of, I guess, where my life started to turn around.
Wow. So in that process of you, pleading guilty, taking ownership that's essentially what it is, right? Taking ownership for your part in what went wrong, essentially. Like, how do you work through that? Like, even when your dad's like, I'm going to support you, but you're going to have to own up to that.
Yeah.
Like, that comes with a different level of a lot of different things, right? I'm assuming, and this is my assumption, and please, correct me if I'm wrong. So the shame.
Definitely.
Right? Immediately. What else comes along with that?
I think shame's the biggest one. Regret. Just looking back and seeing moments where I could have made a different choice and had a completely different outcome, and just wishing that I could go back. Right? So a lot of shame, a lot of regret. But ironically, a lot of hope. There's a level of freedom that comes when you just let it out. Like, I didn't have to keep lying and pretending, and it's like, oh my God, it's a mess. I messed up really bad. And just to be able to like say that, it gave me freedom, And, I guess people will have different feelings. Like, people who've been through that experience will have different feelings about it. But for me, it was like, okay, I got a clean slate. Yeah. I was blessed. I didn't have to go to prison. I was given a suspended sentence. So I basically just had to stay out of trouble.
Essentially, yeah. Most people, I didn't realize that suspended sentences is pretty specific to British law and like what we practice here in Bermuda, because a lot of Americans don't know what that means. Yeah. So I'm glad you said what
basically,
it is.
I guess for viewers' benefit, a suspended sentence is basically where you're sentenced. And you have a criminal record. So I have a criminal record. But the sentence is suspended for a period of time as long as you don't reoffend in that period of time. So I was sentenced to 1 year in prison, but it was suspended for 2 years. So I had to not get in trouble for 2 years. If I would have gotten in trouble, I would have had to go do that year plus whatever additional
offense was.
Time. Yeah. And so I'm really, really grateful. I mean, what some people don't know, even though it was reported in the newspaper, I was actually pregnant with my first son when I was sentenced. Wow. So that morning, driving to court, because I knew that I was going to be sentenced. I pled guilty. So I was going for sentencing. It wasn't a question. And I remember that morning, like, calling some of my friends and telling them, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but don't come visit me at co-ed. Like, I'll write you a letter. Yeah. Like, so dramatic. And I remember driving, and my mom was concerned because I have really sensitive skin. Like, so I can't use regular body wash. And she was worried, like, about whether they would have body wash.
The things that moms think of, right?
We were driving to the court, and I'm in the back, like,
contemplating life, right?
like, I'm gonna have to bring you some. At the time, I was using Johnson & Johnson lavender baby wash, because that was the only thing that like was okay for me. And
she was worried about having to stock you up. She was worried about
making sure that I had what I needed. But I was pregnant. I was pregnant with Skylar, and
did everybody know?
Like, my family knew.
Okay.
Yeah, my family knew, of course. And actually, my lawyer, he mentioned it in his, I can't remember what it's called, but like his closing arguments or whatever. And I think the judge did take that into consideration. And also, like, outside of that experience, I was like a model young woman. You know what I mean? So I guess she took all of that into consideration. And I'll never forget, like, when she told me to stand up. It was Charles Setta. She told me to stand up, and she said, taking everything into consideration, I sentence you to 1 year. And then she paused, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to jail. Right? Like, I'm going to jail. And then she said, suspended for 2 years. And like, my whole, like, talk about waiting to exhale.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
And you're pregnant, right? So you're thinking, man, I'm going to have to have my baby in prison. I'm going to have to have
my baby in prison. Am I going to be able to keep my baby?
Like, what's going to happen?
What's going to happen? Wow. And so I walked out of that courtroom, and I was surrounded by love. My brothers, my parents, my pastor, they hugged me, and we prayed, and that was the beginning of a new life for me. I'm actually getting a little emotional because I haven't told that part often. But yeah.
So in that moment, right, and you're thinking about it, and she's saying all these things, you knew, you owned up to it, you knew what you were going in there to essentially not knowing what was going to happen, right? What was, outside of obviously prison, what was the biggest fear in that moment?
That I would never fulfill any of my dreams. You know, that like this was it for me. You know, I was 23, so young.
Yeah.
You know, full of potential and talent. And I think my biggest fear was like, this is it. Like this would define me. I would always be defined by this choice.
Wow. And I mean, obviously we know that now, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, good side of the story, right? Let's lift it a little lighter.
Yeah. Got a little heavy there.
No, but seriously, I think that's a real thing. Like we don't realize people go through real stuff, right?
People go through real stuff.
Yeah, and we just think life, and sometimes we get so caught up in what's going on with us, we never take into account like what someone else is going through to get them to where they are today. Right.
Yeah.
So when you think of that time frame and everything that you were going through and the gentleman who was in your life at the time, do you harbor any resent for him?
Not now, for many years.
Resentment, excuse me.
Yeah. Not anymore. I was very resentful for many years. You know, I wish I never met him. You know, why didn't I listen to people? Because everybody was trying to get me to come to my senses, you know? And I had lots of opportunities to make a different choice. So I was very, very resentful for a long time. But somewhere along the way, with the help of mentorship, you know, I had an amazing mentor during that time. Her name's Rachel Bailey, Bermudian woman.
Yes, Rachel.
You know, through working with her, I realized that, like, the only person I should really be upset with is myself. You know, and that's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Taking that ownership is difficult.
Yeah,
right?
It's really hard. And so it took years to work through that and come to a place of like forgiving myself for that. And once I was able to do that, I wasn't so mad at him anymore. You know? And like I said earlier, you know, he's gone on to, you know, rehabilitate himself. He's been clean for, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many years, probably 15 or more years. He's living a totally productive life in the UK, and I'm happy for him. I'm grateful that that God gave both of us that opportunity.
Yeah. Do you think that if it wasn't for this, you would have continued to go down that path?
Which path?
With, you know, with being with him and him going in and out of jail, the drug dealing, those types of things.
Quite possibly, because I was like 10 toes down, like
really?
ride or die, Bonnie and Clyde.
Really?
Like,
man.
I don't know. I would like to think I hope that, you know, something would have happened that would have made me kind of realize what I was doing. But I'm just grateful that what happened because all the what ifs, you know, are just literally what ifs, right?
Yeah.
So I quite possibly may have, you know, and a lot of times I think if I wouldn't have gotten pregnant with my son, would I have continued to use drugs? You know, because that's really what initially made me stop.
Got you.
You know, because he wasn't here anymore. So every now and then I just made the choice to do it on my own, you know, like.
Because that's addiction at that point.
Yeah, you know, and I got pregnant with Skylar and just felt like, you know, this isn't what I want for him, you know? And so I don't know. I don't know what would have happened if those things didn't occur, but I'm grateful.
Absolutely. Being very grateful for that. Okay. So all of this has happened. This was in, like you said.
So this was so I was sentenced in 2010. So
like around, I know it's earlier in the year.
It was in September 2010.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that happens. You get the suspended sentence. This amazing weight. It's like essentially kind of lifted off your shoulders because you know you can do right?
Yeah,
you know you are not going to get back
I'm
into
not going
trouble.
to get in trouble.
Like, and I think, you know, like you go back to your roots at that point, right?
Exactly.
And
like I was scared, so it was time to
straighten up.
I
get it though, right? There's nothing like that to, you know, put you back on the straight and narrow. So what did you decide to do at that point to take this moment to change your life.
Right. So thankfully I had already finished my bachelor's, right?
Okay.
So I had a degree, right? And at first I just did little odd jobs. Like, I always tell this story where I used to work on a coffee truck. There was a coffee truck called Planet Coffee. And there was a little red truck.
Yes.
And so I didn't have a job, right? Because even when I was on bail, I had little jobs, and I won't name the establishments, but once they found out I was on bail, it was like, okay, no. And so I had a bachelor's degree, but I couldn't get a job, right? And somehow at like a random event, this was after my son was born, this coffee truck was there, and I ended up talking to the guy who owned it, and he was like, well, actually, I'm looking for someone to work it during the week, you know, because he had like a regular 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And so he hired me for $10 an hour to make
in Bermuda,
$10 an hour to make coffee on the coffee truck at Barnes Corner. And I lived really close to Barnes Corner. Like I could walk to Barnes Corner. So I would get up at 5:30 and walk. Well, I would leave him at 5:30, walk to Barnes Corner in the dark. He would meet me there with his little coffee truck, and then I would set it up and, you know, serve people their coffee while they were driving to work, and then drive this little clown car thing to town, drop him his truck, and I don't know how I got back. Can't remember.
But, and this was every day?
Yeah, every morning that's what I would do.
Was that humbling for you, knowing like I busted my tail for this degree and I'm here serving coffee?
Deeply humbling. It was humbling. And of course there were moments of embarrassment. You know what I mean? When people would come up to get their coffee. And it's like, Juanae, what are you doing here? And full transparency, I didn't even know how to make coffee very well, so I apologize to anyone.
That's the best part of that whole story, okay? That's the best part.
I apologize to anyone who asked for like a cappuccino or something, because if it wasn't black coffee with like sugar and milk.
So my man hired you and did not do a liquor training?
I mean, he showed me how to use the thing, but... that was it.
But you needed that. You needed that opportunity.
I needed it. And, you know, back then it was $10 an hour, which worked out to be like maybe $30 or $40 a day. Can't remember how many hours I did. But that was able to buy diapers and all the things that I needed for my son. I was still living at home, and my dad would have supported me and my son without question. But I felt like after everything I had put that man through, I'm going to go work on this coffee truck so that I can take care of my child. And that's what I did. And while working on the coffee truck, this opportunity came just randomly, or maybe not randomly. It was a program called the Try 30 program, and it was offered by government. It only ever ran once. It was like a pilot, and it was for young adults who were unemployed. And I had filled out the unemployment register, you know, like a good Bermudian, you know, and they picked me. And so they placed me at the Department of Community and Cultural Affairs in the Community Education Department doing admin work. And while I was there, they realized, like, you're really smart and talented.
You've got a brain, and you can do more.
Yeah. So the program was supposed to be like 3 months.
Yeah.
But I ended up working at the department for 2 years.
Wow. And talk about full circle, because didn't you work there before?
Well, this was when I started.
This is when you were there. Okay, cool. I mean, you had the history.
This is how I ended up.
Got you.
There.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had, you know, the interest in history anyway.
Yeah,
so that was very helpful during that time. So
I worked there for 2 years, and I probably would have stayed there, but at the time government had a hiring freeze, so they couldn't actually give me a post with benefits and all of that. So, you know, over the 2 years, I got married, I got pregnant with my twins, and, you know, I came to the decision that I needed to find something that actually had benefits, healthcare, all of that.
Because those things are important.
Yeah, very important. And expensive.
So you got to make sure you know, keep all those things together. So when you talk about, you know, everything that, and this was all within like what, 2 to 3 years?
Yeah. So 2010 sentenced, 2011 had my son. The timeline's crazy. 2011 had my son. 2012 I got married. Wow. 2014 I had my twins. And then just to throw a little razzle dazzle in there, 2016 I was divorced. Wow. So it was a lot you know, that happened in a short span of time. But I survived it.
You survived it, and you're flourishing, right?
Yeah,
in this time. But how was divorce for you? Like, how did you feel during that time?
It felt like another failure. You know, a lot of the reason why I got married was because I had messed up so bad. And I felt like, okay, well, if I get married and settle down and go back to church, you know, everyone would think I'm cool. I'm good. And so, you know, I was dating this man, again, older than me, much older than me. He loved me. He loved my son. And so I was like, yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Got married and, you know, just, it wasn't about living happily ever after. It was about being stable and
doing the right thing.
And doing what I felt was the right thing. But as I continued working on myself, you know, and being in therapy and just unearthing all the stuff that was going on within me, I realized that we were not compatible. This wasn't a great alignment. You know, it wasn't a horrible marriage, but did I want to be in that marriage for 40, 50 years? No, not really, you know? And so I made the hard decision. We made the hard decision because our twins were only one.
Wow.
You know, so we made the decision that this just wasn't.
Yeah. So how does that work, right? Like you're with someone and you realize to your point, you're not compatible, but nothing's happened, right?
Right.
Like I feel like we see that a lot more with women who are like, this isn't working, and the person is great, you know, in their own right and those type of things, but nothing happened. Like, how do you choose to walk away at that point in time? What is the kind of, who do you put first in that situation?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I mean, for me, with my situation, like there wasn't anything horribly wrong, but there were little things that were very uncomfortable. And I felt like I couldn't be my authentic self.
Yeah.
And so it came to a point where I was forced to make that choice because I couldn't hide my authentic self.
Yeah.
You know, and to his defense, he didn't, you know, I portrayed something that I probably wasn't. You know, I at the time was conservative and, you know, nice wifey, you know, material, I guess. I don't know. And that's what he married. And then over the years that we were together, I couldn't maintain that. Like I'm ambitious and career driven and, you know, I don't want to just stay home and make sure that dinner's cooked and your clothes are clean and the house is clean. And I just felt like he wasn't in a place where he could support that, you know? And there were other things as well, you know, a little bit more personal things that we just were not compatible with. And so at the end of the day, it was so hard to just keep going through that every day. And, you know, one day it just happened to be Mother's Day and I was at the spa. He sent me to the spa for Mother's Day and I just sent him a text and I was just like, every part of my life brings me joy, but this, you know, and that was the beginning of us just, and we had gone to counseling, like we had done all the things,
the work,
you know, we was going to church, like everything, you know, and we just agreed that we probably should have stayed friends. Yeah. But in the end, we have our beautiful kids, and he's an amazing co-parent. Even for my oldest son, who's not his biologically, he has been his dad too, and still is. You know,
that's amazing. I think when you get with good people, regardless of the compatibility of it, being able to co-parent and, you know, especially when you have children involved in the situation it's great, right? Yeah. It's something that it kind of warms your heart because sometimes people's disdain for their ex actually prevents them from working together for the kids.
And I see that a lot, obviously, in the work that I do, you know? And at the end of the day, you want to put the kids' well-being first, you know? You don't want to be in an unsafe situation or an abusive situation, but wherever possible, you want to think, what is the best scenario for my children? Yeah. And we found an amazing balance. You know, the kids are with him right now, you know, and, you know, he still gets on my nerves, but at the end of the day, we do whatever is necessary for our kids. Yeah. You know?
So in your life, right, and just reading your bio, also knowing you as well, you've also experienced some significant loss. And you've mentioned recently losing your father, but previous to that, you also lost your brother. Yeah. Like, how have you been dealing with that grief?
Well, in all honesty, when I lost my brother in 2017, I did not deal with it very well. It was a very public death, and so I didn't have space to deal with it very well. And so I kind of returned to some habits that were not helpful, you know, drinking a lot, you know, never returned to drugs, but alcohol, wine every night was like my thing. Put the kids to bed and I'll have some wine, and I ate like I'm an emotional consumer. So that could be food, alcohol, I feel that. It could be clothes, shopping, whatever, right? Yep. And so that's how I coped for like the first 6 months after losing Sean. And then I realized like he wouldn't want this for me. Like I fought way too hard to come out of that dark space of depression. And he would not want his death to be what sends me back. And so that was actually the beginning of like a really intentional healing and spiritual journey, not just for the loss of him, but for everything I had been through. Because, you know, I was so focused on rebuilding my life that I didn't always take time to like pour into myself and recover. It was like, okay, I gotta do what's next. I gotta get married. I gotta get a job. I gotta And so when he died, it was like everything stopped, and I was able to do that work that was really required. And that, I guess that experience prepared me for losing my father. Because, you know, when you lose someone suddenly, it's not the same as if they're sick. You kind of preparing for it or they're older. It's best that you can, you know. And so I lost my brother like completely suddenly, and I don't know if there's a pain that is greater than that, right? So when my dad passed, you know, I had years of him being unwell to prepare for that loss, even though you can never really fully be prepared. But I know that for the last 5-6 years of his life, I showed up as like the absolute best daughter that I could be, because I knew it was coming. Right? So that helped. You know, the experience losing my brother helped me to live so much more intentionally, that when I lost my dad, there was a peace that came with that, you know?
And how do you as a family kind of stay together after that, right? You have tragedy and loss, and then you have a bit more, you know, it's coming loss. But then you also, because during the time of your brother's death, you were also like the spokesperson for your family as well, right? You were like the, you know, we like to say the family manager, you know what I mean, at that time. So that's also an additional weight. Like, how do you guys stay together as a family during that?
Thankfully, we were always a close family. So we always came together for, you know, every single birthday, you know, Christmas, all of that. We've always supported each other. So it was natural to just, you know, fall in line and continue to support each other. And then with my dad, you know, because he was sick, we all kind of played a role in, I guess, just making the last few years of his life good. You know, my mom, she quit working and took care of my dad. My nephew took over my dad's business. You know, I was like the daughter / caregiver / manager of the things. You know, my niece at one point, she came in and was his caregiver. So we all just, you know, that's just what we do. You know, it's just what we do. And I'm so grateful to be from a family like that, you know. And so the same way they rally to support me in my lowest moments, we do the same thing for each other. Like, that's what we do.
Definitely, I can resonate with that 100%, the family aspect of it. And at your core, like, those values never leave you. They never leave. And you always come together in the best times for that. But given essentially everything that you've been through, right? How much of everything that you've been through have prepared you for your current role?
100%. Like, I chuckle all the time. I'm like, okay, God, I get it. So you wanted me to go through every single thing possible so that when these women walk into my office, I am speaking from a place of complete understanding and non-judgment and relatability. And then also I have a story of hope that I can give them. I don't, you know, and this is no offense to anyone who is in this profession, but I don't just have the textbook answer for them, what you're supposed to say. I'm actually a living, breathing, walking example that you can 100% change your life.
Yeah.
Like it's 100% possible.
Yeah. And I think that's the key, right? Like that's the missing key. Like sometimes we have people in positions that do well, the textbook side of it, and are very good at their jobs.
Yeah.
But very rarely, it's difficult not to be able to relate. Right. And sometimes, especially when people are in the lowest points, it's like, okay, yeah, pull your socks up. You can do it. Rah, rah, rah.
Yeah.
But there's a difference to someone saying, no, I know where you've been before.
Like I literally know how hard it is to overcome an addiction.
Yeah.
I know how hard it is to be a single mom. I know how hard it is to leave a relationship, you know? But I also know that the strength that's required to carry me through those hard situations is still there to elevate me to the next thing. Yeah. You know, so you have to draw on that strength. Like, you know, a lot of women, we go through things and the world tends to look down on us because of the things that we've been through. But it takes a really, really strong woman to go through abuse and still be there and still be willing to get up every day and fight, you know, or go through, loss, significant loss, or even making massive mistakes that end up on the front page of the newspaper, right? To be able to go through that and still get up and like keep going is incredible. It's like, it's
a superpower,
it's
100%.
A superpower, you know?
Yeah, and then when you look at it from that angle, and then you couple in having children, right? And having to show up for them as well. Like you have 3 boys that you have to show up for every single day. And, you know, with the women that you help at the Women's Resource Center, I'm sure a lot of them also have children too, right? So I think coupling all that together, like we do some amazing things as women. That's the first thing, right? Yeah. And then everything that you kind of pour into these women, like how receptive are they?
I think they're very receptive. I mean, a lot of them don't know my journey, right? And I have to remind myself, it has been enough time where some people just don't know. I think that everybody knows because obviously...
You felt like that
at that time. Like that, you know what I mean? It was literally on the front page of the newspaper. But I've done so much other things since then that people don't always either remember or they just never knew. And so sometimes I have to tell them, like, listen, you know, I'm not just sitting here in this seat telling you things that I think you want to hear. Like, like, you know, and it shouldn't be about me, but sometimes there are opportunities to really inspire someone by sharing that personal story. Yeah,
definitely. And I think also, you know, we always say you go through, everything happens for a reason, right? And I think this new role that you're in is the literal kind of definition of that, right? Definitely. Because it allows you to pour into people from a personal experience, but then you also went back to school to be able to apply that knowledge into a way that can expand and do all of that, right? So I think it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think you're pretty great. No, it's crazy because I have so much more to talk to you about, but we're running out of time, bro. It's crazy. I told you it always happens. Like you just look up and then it's like, oh wow, 45 minutes, gone, done and dusted. But no, I think we could definitely expand on this more, you know, going forward, and I definitely want to have a additional conversation with you. But for purposes of time and here on the podcast today, like, what are some things that, you know, given everything that you've been through, right, and everything that you've learned, and the things that you're going to continue to doing, what is something that you want to be remembered for? Like when you know, are old and gray and, you know, you've retired and, you know, everything that you can look back on now and where you currently sit, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for creating safe spaces for women to be their most authentic self. Yeah. And be able to create a life beyond their wildest dreams. That's what I want to be remembered for. You know, I feel like it sounds cliche, but I want to be remembered for making people feel safe.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. I love that. Yes, that's good. Okay, so let's give the listeners some ways to get in contact with you. So you're at the Women's Resource Center. That's the first thing. So let's talk about how, if someone wants to get in contact with you or the Women's Resource Center, how can they do that?
Sure. So at the Women's Resource Center, you can contact us obviously by giving us a call, 295-3882. But our website is www.wrcbermuda.com. And just really quick, I just want to say that the Women's Resource Center, we've recently rebranded. So we have a host of programs and services, not just for women who might find themselves in a rough situation. We have empowerment programs and services and education and all of that. So if that's something that you think you might benefit from, just head over to our website.
Okay, perfect. And also you have a blog and a podcast that you have as well. Yes. So tell me a bit about that.
So A Little Girl Grows Up, that's my Instagram handle. It started as a blog, you know, like a traditional blog, but now it's more like when I feel the inspiration, I hop on stories and just share whatever. It's not structured. It's very authentic. But if that's your thing, you can follow me there
and check it out. When the spirit moves. Yes. There you go. Well, thank you so much, Juanae, for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and I'm confident that your story will touch someone, and that's why thank you for trusting me to share that here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, we just had an amazing episode with Juanae Crockwell. She is also the new executive director of the Women's Resource Center. Make sure you head over to the website to learn about all the amazing new programs they have from their new rebrand, as well as give them a call if you just want to find it out that way as well. Also, follow Juanae on Instagram, A Little Girl Grows Up. You can learn more about her and anything that kind of hits her spirit that day that she wants to share with you. You can find on her Instagram channel. As always, head over to our website, hustleherpodcast.com, where you can sign up to be a VIP listener, as well as catch up on all the other episodes. You can also see our new blog that we've launched, where you can comment on today's episode and let me know what you think. We have merch, guys. We have some new hats in stock. We have the mustard ones. We also have the black ones, and we'll have some sweatshirts that are coming out. All of that can be found on the website. So as always, thank you for spending some time with me today and for watching Hustle Her Podcast.